I honestly never thought I'd be sharing this story, but looking back now, I can see exactly where everything went wrong. I'm Blair, 27, and this is about how I completely ruined what could have been an amazing relationship because I couldn't keep my mouth shut about something I should have just taken to my grave. It all started last summer at this rooftop bar downtown. My friend Kaylee had been begging me to come out because her coworker was bringing his friend group. I almost bailed because I had a brutal week at work, but something told me to just go. That's when I met Dylan. He wasn't what I usually go for. He was more clean-cut, worked in software sales, drove a practical car, basically the opposite of my usual type. But there was something about the way he carried himself that drew me in. We spent the whole night talking on that rooftop, and I found myself actually enjoying how easy it was to talk to him. No games, no weird vibes, just genuine conversation. He asked for my number at the end of the night, and I gave it to him without even playing hard to get. That's how comfortable he made me feel. Our first few dates were perfect. He took me to this amazing sushi place. We went hiking, which I normally hate but actually enjoyed with him, and everything just felt natural. When we finally got intimate, though, that's when I noticed things were inconsistent. Some nights were great, others were just okay, but I figured that's just how things go sometimes, right? The thing is, I'd had my wild phase in college. I'd experienced things that, let's just say, set some pretty high standards. But Dylan was different. He was stable, caring, and actually listened when I talked. I found myself wanting to make it work despite the hit-or-miss intimacy. My best friend Madison kept telling me I was finally growing up by choosing substance over excitement. And honestly, she was right. Dylan had his life together, owned his condo, had a great career, and treated me like gold. We could talk for hours about anything and everything. When he kissed me goodbye every morning before work, it felt like something out of those cheesy romance movies I pretend to hate. The first 2 months flew by, and I started noticing how different he was from my exes. No random girls in his DMs, no sketchy late-night texts, no questionable social media activity. He was just genuine. It was refreshing, but also kind of strange, like waiting for the other shoe to drop because it seemed too good to be true. I remember sitting with my girls at brunch one Sunday, and they were all going through their usual dating horror stories. Meanwhile, I'm there thinking about how Dylan had just helped me meal prep for the week and organized my messy closet without even being asked. It was like I'd hit the jackpot, even if some aspects weren't mind-blowing. Looking back now, I realize I had something real. Something that could have grown into something amazing if I hadn't been so focused on that one thing that wasn't perfect. But I guess that's getting ahead of the story. At this point, I still thought I could handle the situation like a mature adult. Spoiler alert, I couldn't have been more wrong. As things got more serious between us, I started doing something I'm not proud of. I began overcompensating during our intimate moments, like way overcompensating. I'm talking dramatic reactions, over-the-top praise, the whole 9 yards. Deep down, I knew I was trying to convince myself as much as him that everything was perfect. I'd meet up with Madison and Kaylee for our weekly wine nights, and I couldn't help but spill everything. "Girls, you don't understand," I'd say, already 2 glasses in. "He's literally perfect in every other way. I just have to hype him up a little bit in the bedroom. It's not even lying, really. It's more like positive reinforcement." They'd laugh, and we'd share stories about our past experiences. I found myself comparing Dylan to my ex, Chase, who, well, let's just say he knew what he was doing. I knew it wasn't fair to Dylan, but I couldn't stop myself from thinking about it. Still, I convinced myself I was doing the right thing by boosting Dylan's confidence. Things were actually going really well outside the bedroom. We had started talking about moving in together, and Dylan had even introduced me to his parents. His mom loved me, and his dad kept making hints about wedding bells. I was starting to picture a future with him. House, kids, the whole package. I got really good at the whole performance thing. I had my routine down pat. The right things to say, the right moments to be extra enthusiastic. Sometimes I'd catch myself feeling guilty about it, but then I'd remind myself that white lies are part of every relationship, right? Besides, Dylan seemed happier than ever. more confident. My friends started calling me the ego whisperer, because I'd brag about how good I was at making Dylan feel like a champion. "You should see how he struts around after," I'd tell them during our brunches, and we'd all giggle like we were sharing some kind of inside joke. Looking back, I was probably trying to convince myself that what I was doing wasn't totally messed up. I even started giving advice to other girls in our friend group. "Men are simple," I'd say, swirling my mimosa. "Just make them feel like they're the best you've ever had, even if they're not, and they'll treat you like a queen." God, I cringe thinking about how smug I was, like I had it all figured out. The thing is, Dylan really was good to me. He remembered every important date, supported my career moves, and even put up with my family drama without complaining. He'd surprise me with little gifts just because, plan thoughtful dates, and always made sure I felt safe and cared for. I had everything I wanted in a relationship, except that one thing. I kept telling myself it didn't matter, that I was being shallow for even thinking about it. But deep down I knew I was living a lie every time I put on my little performance. Still, I figured this was just how adult relationships worked. You compromise on some things to keep the peace. Nobody has it all, right? What I didn't realize was that all my little acts of kindness were about to blow up in my face in the most humiliating way possible. But hey, we'll get to that part soon enough. It happened on our 6-month anniversary. Dylan had gone all out, cooked this amazing dinner, bought my favorite wine, even scattered rose petals everywhere. I know, totally cheesy, but it was sweet. We had just finished eating, and things were getting heated. I was doing my usual routine, the whole act I had perfected over the months. I had been extra dramatic that night, probably because of the wine. Something about the whole setup made me feel like I needed to put on an Oscar-worthy performance. Dylan was totally buying it, getting more confident with every exaggerated reaction from me. Looking back, I probably went overboard, but I was riding that wave of validation I'd created. Then it happened. We were having this intense moment, and Dylan, feeling himself more than ever thanks to my award-winning performance, looked me right in the eyes and asked, "Baby, tell me the truth. Am I the best you've ever had?" I still don't know what came over me. Maybe it was the wine, maybe it was months of pretending catching up to me, or maybe it was just the absurdity of the moment hitting me all at once. But I completely lost it. I'm not talking about a cute little giggle. I'm talking about full-on, uncontrollable laughter. I literally spat out the water I had just taken a sip of, all over the sheets. The more I tried to stop laughing, the harder I laughed. You know those moments where something isn't even that funny, but the fact that you shouldn't be laughing makes it 10 times worse? That's exactly what happened. Here was this beautiful, intimate moment, and I'm cackling like a hyena. Dylan's face, God, I'll never forget his face. It was like watching someone's soul leave their body. The confidence that had been there moments before just drained away. He just froze. And still, I couldn't stop laughing. I tried to cover my mouth, tried to apologize between giggles, but it just kept coming. "I'm sorry," I managed to gasp out between laughs. "I'm not laughing at you, I swear. I remembered something funny." Even I knew how pathetic that excuse sounded. The mood was completely shattered. Dylan just got up, put his clothes on, and went to the bathroom without saying a word. When he came back out, he acted like nothing happened, but everything had changed. His eyes were different. His smile didn't reach them anymore. He kissed me goodnight and said he was tired, but I could feel it. Something had broken between us. I spent the next few days trying to make up for it. I sent him sweet texts, tried to initiate things, even bought him his favorite takeout. He went through the motions of accepting my apologies, but that look in his eyes never went away. It was like he was seeing me clearly for the first time, and he didn't like what he saw. What I didn't know then was that this wasn't just going to blow over. That moment of uncontrollable laughter had triggered something in Dylan's mind, something that would lead him to start noticing things about me he'd been blind to before. And trust me, what he was about to discover would make my laughing fit look like a minor hiccup in comparison. After that night, Dylan started acting different. Not in an obvious way at first. He still kissed me goodbye in the mornings, still texted during the day, still made plans for dates. But there was this distance. Like he was watching me instead of just being with me. I'd catch him studying me when he thought I wasn't looking, especially when I was on my phone. I started noticing little changes in his behavior. He'd ask more questions about my girls' nights out, wanted to know who I was texting, would randomly pick up my phone to check the time, even though he was wearing a watch. At first, I thought he was just being insecure about the laughing incident, but it felt like more than that. One night, I was getting ready for bed and heard my phone buzz. I usually keep it face down, old habit, you know? But before I could grab it, Dylan had already picked it up. He didn't say anything, just handed it to me with this look I couldn't quite read. It was a Tinder notification. I had forgotten to delete the app after re-downloading it just to look, a few weeks back. I played it cool, deleted the app right in front of him, and made some joke about how these dating apps never actually delete your profile. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. That's when I started getting nervous. I spent the next few days doing a digital cleanse, deleting apps, clearing messages, removing any trace of the extracurricular activities I'd been engaging in during our relationship. Looking back, I should have known he was onto me. He started working late more often, was less interested in going out with our friends, and spent a lot of time just thinking. I'd ask what was wrong, and he'd say nothing, in that way that clearly meant something. But I convinced myself everything was fine. After all, he hadn't found anything concrete, right? The weekend after the Tinder incident, we were hanging out at his place watching movies. He ordered pizza, like we always did on Saturday nights. But his phone was dead, so he asked to use mine to place the order. I handed it over without thinking. I'd just cleaned everything out. What could he possibly find? I was focused on the movie, not really paying attention to what he was doing. It wasn't until I heard him make this weird sound, like a laugh, but cold, that I looked over. He wasn't ordering pizza. He was scrolling through my recently deleted photos folder. The folder I had completely forgotten about. The folder full of screenshots of conversations with other guys, dating app chats, and some, let's say, compromising photos I'd sent to not Dylan. My stomach dropped. You know that feeling when you're on a roller coaster and it suddenly drops? Yeah, multiply that by about 1,000. I watched his face change as he kept scrolling, and I knew everything was about to explode. The laughing incident had just been the trigger. This was the loaded gun, and boy, was Dylan about to go off. So, he said, his voice scary calm, want to explain this? He turned my phone toward me, showing a particularly spicy conversation from 2 weeks ago. My mind went blank. You know how people say your life flashes before your eyes? Well, all my lies flashed before mine. I started crying immediately. Not cute crying, but ugly sobbing with mascara everywhere. Dylan, I can explain, I choked out, but he just laughed. Not his usual warm laugh, but this hollow sound that made my skin crawl. Explain what, Blair? The dating apps? The messages? The pictures? He scrolled through my phone, each swipe of his finger like a knife in my gut. Or maybe explain how you've been laughing at me this whole time? Making me feel like an idiot while you're out there with who knows how many guys? That's when I panicked and made everything worse. It's not what you think. I just forgot to delete those apps from before we met. Even as the lies tumbled out, I knew how pathetic they sounded. The timestamps on everything proved I was lying. Dylan just stared at me, and suddenly all my emotions turned to anger. How dare he go through my phone? You had no right to look through my private stuff. I snapped, trying to grab my phone back. What, you got insecure after I laughed at your little question and decided to play detective? His face hardened at that. My little question? You mean when I was vulnerable with someone I thought I could trust, and you literally spat water laughing in my face? Yeah, that might have opened my eyes a bit. I switched tactics, trying to make him feel guilty. I've been nothing but supportive of you. Do you know how hard I've worked to make you feel good about yourself? All those times I pretended you were amazing in bed. I slapped my hand over my mouth, but it was too late. The look on his face? I'd never seen someone look so disgusted. Wow, he said quietly. You really are something else. You think pretending and lying to me was being supportive? while you're out there sending pictures to other guys and meeting up with them? Well, maybe if you were better in bed, I wouldn't have had to look elsewhere. The words just exploded out of me. I immediately regretted them, but I couldn't stop. You want to know why I laughed? Because it was ridiculous. You thinking you were the best I've ever had? Please. I've had better experiences with my electric. Get out. His voice was ice cold. When I didn't move, he raised his voice. Get out. I started sobbing again, trying to backtrack. Baby, I didn't mean that. I was just angry. Please, we can work on this. I'll do better, I promise. But Dylan wasn't having it. You know what's funny? He said, walking to his door and opening it. I actually thought you were different. Thought you were genuine. But you're just mean. Actually mean. And I deserve better than someone who gets off on humiliating me. I tried one last time, pulling out the waterworks. Dylan, please. I love you. He just looked at me with those empty eyes. No, Blair, you loved having someone to manipulate. Now get out of my house. As I stood in the hallway of his apartment building, mascara running down my face, I had no idea that the worst part wasn't even the breakup. No, the worst was yet to come. The next few weeks were brutal. I kept expecting Dylan to text me, to give me another chance to explain. But instead, I watched through social media as he systematically removed me from his life. First, the relationship status change. Then, all our pictures disappeared from his profile. Finally, the block. My friends tried to comfort me, but I could tell even they were torn. Madison, who's usually my ride or die, actually said I went too far. Blair, honey, you didn't just cheat on him. You humiliated him. That's kind of messed up. I stopped talking to her after that. Some friend she turned out to be. I tried dating again, got back on the apps officially this time. But something felt different. Every guy I met, I found myself comparing to Dylan. Not in the bedroom, I meant the other stuff. The way he'd bring me coffee in bed, how he remembered every little story about my childhood, the way he looked at me like I was his whole world, before I ruined it. The worst part? Our mutual friends chose sides, and guess whose side they picked? Even Kaylee, who introduced us, stopped inviting me to group hangouts. I found out through Instagram that they still hang out with Dylan. They post pictures at our old favorite spots, and he looks happy. Actually happy. Last week I was at that same rooftop bar where we first met. I overheard someone mention that Dylan's dating someone new, some girl from his gym. Apparently she's really sweet and perfect for him. I wanted to scream. That should have been me. I mean, technically it was me, but I should have been better at it. You want to know the really messed up part? Sometimes I catch myself wondering if I actually did him a favor. Like, maybe by being so horrible, I forced him to find someone who actually appreciates him. But then I get angry, because why does he get to have a happy ending? He's probably out there warning his new girl about crazy exes and making me sound like the villain. I've tried telling our story to new guys I date, spinning it to make myself sound better. But every time I tell it, I have to leave out more and more details because, well, there's really no way to make I laughed in his face during an intimate moment and then he caught me cheating sound good, is there? Some nights, when I'm alone and being honest with myself, I know I messed up. Not just the cheating, that was bad enough, but the way I treated someone who genuinely cared about me, the way I played with his insecurities for my own entertainment, the way I made him feel small because I thought it was funny. But then I think about how he went through my phone without permission, how he made me feel ashamed and embarrassed in the end, and I get angry all over again. He didn't have to kick me out like that. He didn't have to block me everywhere. He could have at least given me a chance to explain myself better. So here I am, single again, telling this story to whoever will listen. And you know what? Maybe the next guy will be better. Maybe the next guy will be able to take a joke. Maybe the next guy will actually deserve my honesty. But a small voice in my head, the one I try really hard to ignore, keeps whispering that Dylan wasn't the problem. Too bad I'm really good at not listening to that voice.